Now, despite what Pookie and them might have told you, don't worry. Mental health is not a scary thing, but it is something that we need to talk about. Right? We all have to take care of our mental well-being, and no, taking care of your mental well-being does not make you crazy. In fact, I don't know, I can't speak on it because I'm not the expert. But lucky for you all, we do have some experts in the room now. And so, with that being said, I would like to invite the panelists up to the stage here. And yes, you guys know who you are, but I will make sure the rest of the people in the house know who you are as well. So we have the wonderful Mr. Paul Edwards. He is the founder of the Emotional Intelligence Urban Initiative. Yes, and Paul is what I like to call a visionary. His understanding and approach to mental health and wellness is well respected and well regarded in my All right, so we also have Pastor Nelvern Samuel. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Nelvern, he's a community activist and the leader of NRS Ministries. He has a heart for God's people and is taking care of them through his work on Soul Survivor Group and Agape House Missions, both founded. We have Muhammad Jallo. I don't understand something about it. Yes. Y'all say that right, Muhammad? Y'all say that right? Oh, okay. Now, Muhammad is a graduate level media management student, and he is the owner of a clothing brand called Broken Kids Project. Broken brand. Come on now, the merch. I love it. We have also C. Aaron Hinton. Yes, C. Aaron. He is the founder of Deuces Inc. as a nonprofit, and it is an acronym. And I hope I get it right. You're gonna tell me if I got it right now. Do You Enlightenment and Cultural Empowerment Service. Yes, Deuces, and this is geared toward youth empowerment. Okay, I will let Mr. Aaron tell you a little bit more about that in a second. We also have Mr. Omar Hardy here. Yes, he is the co-owner of the Black Lady Theater, as well as Elite Graphix, and he is what we like to call an industrialist, a media proprietor. And when I tell you this man is a resilient man, which I know I will let y'all get into that in a little bit. I ain't going to say the show. All right, and we also have Mr. Charles Harper.
No, Charles Harper is here, but he.
Okay, so who do we have? Because this is new. Okay, please tell us who you are.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Smythe, proprietor of Stratosphere Studios and Brooklyn native.
You heard that? So clap it up for our panelists tonight. Omar is going to be guiding this conversation, but please, if you guys have any questions or comments or things, this is an open floor, this is an open discussion, and we're here to start breaking some of those boundaries that society has placed on us. So, guys, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. How y'all doing today? Beautiful. Wow, it's a powerful panel up here. A bunch of brothers, brothers. Y'all look good.
Appreciate you.
Word
Let's spell that word another name.
up. Word up. Word up. All right, fellas, yeah, let's jump right into it. So, first question, anybody could go and take it, but I want to know, how have you guys seen mental health issues show up in your careers of work?
How mental health issues sort of in my career of work?
Yeah.
Well, I always tell people, you know, I'm supposed to be a quote-unquote mental health specialist. So the first place it shows up is my own mental health, you know? And so the word, what is the word specialist? Like, you know, every day I'm wondering, am I a specialist? What does that mean to me? Because it's hard dealing with my own mental health, right? It's hard really seeing what my own emotional intelligence is. So that would be the first place is me, I would say, you know, if that's answering the question properly. You know, it starts with yourself first, you know?
That's real.
So that's where I see it first. And then, of course, the people I engage and the people, when we do workshops, you know, we have discourse, you and I have a lot of discourse.
Yeah, hold on.
Some of the folks on the panel have discourse with them, you know, so I see, basically myself and people I engage, I entertain, you know.
Okay. Yeah, you know, we definitely still want to stay there, but you know, I also want to say, like this area, you know, mental health, you know, one is so broad, you know, and for so long, Cherie spoke on it a little earlier, saying that, you know, mental health has been looked at as like taboo, you know, as far as, I know for me specifically, you know, like with growing up, it's like, you know, when a conversation comes up about mental health, or if it's about going to therapy or something, it's, oh, me, nah, I don't know therapy, right? So like, can we speak to that? Like, why is mental health looked at as taboo, and you know, still with the, you know, how does it show up in your careers and work? How do you want to take that?
Yeah, so I feel mental health is kind of looked at as taboo because it hasn't really been addressed just the way it needs to be. The way that we're just taught from generations before us until now, we don't really give enough attention towards mental health, and we're just kind of ingrained to continue on with things without really questioning why. Why were we taught to follow certain behavioral patterns? Why should we continue to just live the lives we live without actually thinking to ourselves, how is this affecting us? How is this impacting us? And I think because we just gone so long without questioning these things, that's kind of why when people actually bring it up, it's just like, what is this guy talking about? Like, what's really the point? What's he getting at? Because we're just so unfamiliar with the topic.
Wow. And I think you made a,
I want to jump in on that. Part of it is, especially with black men, we've been trained to grind. We've been trained to be the ops. We've been trained to just go out and get it done. We've been trained to hustle. And part of the problem I find is that in the midst of it, it's not just what we were taught to do outside of school when we finish school, or to take care of the family, but it goes back even to slave days, where we in our mind we just have to get it done. And if you stop to feel, if you're not whipped by the master, you're whipped by society. You're not supposed to stop and feel. You're not supposed to stop and hurt. And the moment we begin to hurt, we begin to expose the weak thing. And unfortunately, going back to the way we've been taught after the transatlantic slave trade, is that we've been taught that the moment you begin to express yourself, you're soft. As long as you express yourself, you fail. The moment you express yourself, you're weak. And in my particular area and field, outside of just being a spiritual advisor, leader, pastor, also just doing my community work, a lot of times I find that when people begin to express themselves, they're broken. They feel like they're too far gone, and they're trying to get. I'm like the final stop before they go off. Like, Pastor, you gotta help. You gotta pray for me, or else. And unfortunately, we've gone through so many stages that potentially a therapist could have slowed them down. And I think sometimes we look at therapy as an exposure of weakness, when in actuality it's a cry for help. And while they might be two sides of the same coin, the outcome is totally different. And unfortunately, we've been taught, or we expect the explosion rather than the education. And at the end of the day, we're a better people because we can stop and have the conversation. You know, and I don't want to take too much time on that because it's personal for me. and I'll probably get into it a little later, the challenge for many of us is not necessarily talking to people, but talking to people we can trust. Because we've always been taught what happens in this house stays in this house. And that's another nuance in mental health and giving therapy. But I'm gonna pause there.
But we also broken because you said, what did you say? You said when we are ready to share, we're broken. But we're also, but other people explode. But other people break us too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes you give somebody an inkling that you want to share and do it yourself, and they tell you, oh, you don't need that. You know, I think Sharice mentioned in one of our powwows, she mentioned that you always got to be tough. You got to keep up this exterior. They want you, they condition you to maintain an exterior, not to show feeling. The brother mentioned something. He said behavioral patterns. These behavioral patterns are passed down from generation to generation where you can't express yourself. And learning to regulate your emotions starts from, as soon as you come out of the womb, you learn to regulate emotions. Wow. You know, the infant looks at the mother's face, and if the mother's always grimacing, if the mother smiles a lot, the infant picks up on that. And they can see the infant smirk too and smile when the mother has a pleasant, you know, and when the mother's not pleasant, you see it in the infant's face also. So you're learning to regulate emotions from the womb, and then you watch how, interaction in the home. Are they yellers, are they screamers? You know, are they calm when there's conflict? You know, but we also grow up with this, you need to keep your emotions, you gotta seal it, you can't express it. You know, how many times we see young brothers fight with little boys? I teach you how to fight, you know. They think that's cute, fighting with little boys, or fight, you know, why is that cute? What's so important about why is fighting so important? You know, learn to express. I mean, I saw that coming up, and they always tussling with the boy.
Yeah.
That's gonna make you a man. Not expressing yourself is what men, you know, me not look at.
Yeah, that's powerful. You know, I'm speaking from the experience. It was, you know, growing up, like, yeah, you know, being toughened up, whether it's fighting, getting slapped in my back to wake up, you know, just gotta be tough. You know, better not cry. Don't cry. You know, don't cry. You know, I didn't know really how to express myself till later on in life. You know, like after high school. You know.
How was that? How was that?
I still working on it. You know, I used to use the phrase, or feelings is a weak emotion. You know what I mean? Nah, forget that. I mean, I feel no, so I accept that. You know, can you speak to that? Like, you know, why is feelings not a weak emotion?
Well, because we're human beings, and we're designed with feelings. And if you don't express yourself with the variety of feelings that you have, you will explode. You'll get it'll create internal sickness, and you will vomit that sickness out of other people. And so, that very narrow lane of that describes how we're supposed to be as whatever, as black people, as men. That very narrow view does not allow the individual to be themselves. So now, not even getting to the point of whether you can express yourself with your feelings, just can you even just be the kind of person you find yourself to be. So like, you're the geeky kid, and you gotta dumb yourself down in school just to not, because you're not the tough kid, or, you know, you're just not like everybody else. And then now, like you said, how long does it take before one is strong enough or brave enough to realize they want to express themselves? So like you're saying, it took me X years before I could even peep out.
Right.
You know, just, oh, this is me. I can come out. You know, so as a community, we're carrying on centuries worth of baggage, and so we're at a revelation period where this is becoming a talking point, where people are recognizing, hey, you know, there's a variety of types of existence, of characters. There's feelings that we are human beings we're not chattel, we're not, tough. Let's say this, I remember when my parents passed, and I was watching my sister, and she passed out. And when she came to, she was crying. And what I know from that period on, that whole thing, don't cry, that is such, so many lines that we grow up with. That's one of those lines, right? People gotta understand that we are built with, we were created as we are, so we do these things. Crying is a mechanism for expression. If you don't express yourself, one way or the other, it's going to come out. And in terms of mourning, people are like, oh, don't cry for this, don't cry for that, or the person, you gotta be tough for your family, because, they're all dealing with the passage of a loved one. Well, if you don't let yourself get that cry out, it's gonna collapse you. It will collapse you if you don't get a chance to utilize the mechanisms. Because when you're a baby, you don't not cry because the babies cry. If they need to be changed, they cry. There's something wrong with them, they cry. That's how they communicate. Right. And that never stops being a part of our makeup. Wow. When you need to get that cry out, get that cry out.
Let me just say this too. You mentioned babies. During World War I and II, when the orphan children, when these children they put them in the orphanage, right? Because of the war, parents get killed or lost or whatever, and they put them in the orphanage, and they kept them warm, right? They kept them dry, they fed them, but they didn't pick them up and hug them, and they died. So inherently, we need contact, right? So that's one part of it. But then the other part of it is they've realized there's a documentary called Healing on Amazon. You gotta watch it. That your cells are a switch. Switch. Two ways to go, right? And so if you got two people grow up in the same household, everything the same, and then one leaves, even twins, and the other one goes somewhere else, and they follow them later on, and one has cancer and the other one doesn't. And they say what it was that it was the environment, because you got to know you're born into the same family, but they veer off. The environment that one was in was stressful, and that's where the cancer came from. Okay? Eating the same foods, raised the same way, same values after they leave home, but the environment causes, so sickness, they learn more and more, comes from the suppression of, it comes from inside out. Not even so much the food. When you got people, George Burns smokes cigars. I don't know if y'all know George Burns. George Burns, right? Google, right? Smokes cigars all his life. I'm not saying you should smoke cigars all your life, and I'm not saying you should not, keep a great diet. But a lot of it they realizing is the switch. So if I put pressure on you constantly, you got the same diet, same lifestyle, same morals, principles, same religious faith, how we practice, but you got more stress than me. You get sick. They're also realizing how people have no alternatives to their sickness, and they find another thing, meditation and your attitude and your viewpoint on life. You change your viewpoint towards life. You find a way to infiltrate your subconscious mind. You use your conscious mind to infiltrate your subconscious mind so that you can live these things that you want and attract these things that you want. And people have reversed their process, their terminal illness with the mind. You know what I'm saying? Wow.
Well, so I didn't get to answer the first question that you asked.
Yeah, but you gotta have permission to speak, y'all.
So, I like what Paul was saying earlier about how, with the mental health in our careers, it starts with us, with me first. And, naming the organization we use enlightenment, right there, enlightenment. This generation, we say woke. You understand? People are woke and not sleep. Right. So I feel like, I'm living in a world where I'm awoke, but I can't just keep watching everybody around me sleep. Like, you understand? So if I'm woke, I need to start trying to wake other people up.
How do we do that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. My personal experience
it's interesting to try to get a panel like this in 2009 when I first started doing this. Wasn't happening. Black men was not budging. They was set comfortable in the ways of what it was. It was like, you know, we talk about it all the time. You go away to college, 4 to 8 years, come back, got a degree. Everybody looking at you like, oh, you think you better than me? You understand? But the same 4 to 8 years, I go do a bit upstate, come home, and y'all popping bottles and drawing, you know. So it's like, we mentally wasn't really in a space where it was like, we was trying to be woke and actually act on it. So I just started working with the kids, basically, and that's how I kind of got started with the youth empowerment aspect of it. Now, in empowering youth, I understand, like my brother was saying, we as a people, you know, inherited like this whole, we just gotta work hard. We're not taught to feel, we're not taught to, you know, just take it out on the work. You understand? Whatever's going on at home, you come to work, you just grind hard, do the job, get your paycheck, and, you know. But I started feeling like I'm getting older. So a wise man told me, you gotta start working smarter, not harder. You understand? So I'm working with all these young people, let them do the hard work, and you be the one to kind of plan it out. So basically what I teach a lot of the young people, because ironically in our community, they have this thing now called the IEP, where a lot of our young people have these individualized education plans. And, you know, we know what that's about, you understand, and the conspiracy behind it, and why they do it, and, you know, with the doctors and the pharmaceuticals and all that, so we ain't gonna get into all that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure later on down the line we can. Right. But what I teach these young people is like, look, for instance, if y'all one child, they say they got ADHD, you understand? So they can't sit in one chair for a long period of time, long enough to take a test. They minds are constantly spinning, they bouncing around. So what I tell them is, look, if they telling you that you can't focus on one thing, what you gotta learn to do is learn to focus on everything. You understand? So don't let, whatever they say your disability is, you make that your super ability. You understand? So now you don't need no pills, you don't need no, you understand all that stuff that they trying to give you. So that's kind of how, like, you know, working with mental health in my profession goes.
Constant. How do you focus? How do you do that? And who's doing it? Why are you doing that? Right? And then I heard the other day that you have a classroom with 30 children, and they mix it up now. They're so overwhelmed. You have special ed mixed with children who learn in regular life. How do you do that? How do you do that? And expect the kids to learn. Coming out of COVID.
They don't expect the kids to learn.
Right.
That's it.
Systems.
That's it.
Right? So you have this two, you have the ones who are not doing so well in the same classroom. Then you got all the social media stuff and dopamine and your brain popping all over the place.
So it's crashing the society.
Yeah, the constant influx of information that we get, just going on to your point about social media. There's a constant influx of information that we get. There's constant updates just on the news of things going on with COVID, things going on with our educational system and how that's been negatively impacting us. There's times where it just feels like there's not really an escape for what's really going on. And just go further onto social media, a lot of that is misinformation as well. Just going back to the negative mental health stereotypes that's kind of perpetuated. A lot of the famous icons that we know through social media or through other forms of media such as music and things like that, they really gain a lot of their, how can I say, notoriety through pain. Like the pain of the black man is actually something that's been sort of idolized, whether it be through their music or whatever. And it's all fun and games for now. Everyone's tuned into it until we start seeing these celebrities, these icons die at our ages. Like they're dying younger and younger. We're turning 22. We already have to worry about police not being able to make it back home just off of the possibility that we might get stopped off the wrong thing. But then adding on to that, just having to carry these negative stereotypes, having to carry these negative perpetuations that aren't really reality, but we keep it going because it's just so popularized. It's really killing us on the inside.
Wow. And I'm being triggered, that's it.
Wow.
And so there's a relationship between dopamine, social media, and the rise in suicide amongst girls, period, and girls of color.
Right.
That's a problem. The suicide rate for black teenagers is the highest it's ever been. Okay?
Right.
So,
Now, let's,
If I can, I'm gonna jump in on that, both of them actually.
so I said, like, I had black child, suicide rate.
So in 2020, I went into, and actually 2021, I went into a deep place, a dark place, a place of depression. The reason why I knew I was in that place, and yes, I'm a pastor, and the reason why I knew I was in that place is that in 2013, I had gone into a place of depression, and I expressed suicidal ideation. And because I had
I'm sorry, you guys know what ideation
I'm
is?
sorry, I had suicidal ideas, okay? So, to the point where I knew what I was going to do, I had planned out how I was going to do it. That also was the year, believe it or not, that I became the lead pastor of my church. Because one of the things people don't teach us how to handle is the pressure of the higher level. The moment you go up, the moment you go higher in the mountain, the atmosphere's pressure shifts. And because of the shift in the pressure, you think differently, you process differently. And unfortunately, we do well putting people in place, but not preparing them. Even when our ancestors pass on, right? I've made a declaration to every young man that I work with, you're going to be the last generation that had to start from zero, right? You're going to pass something on to the next generation. And one of the things I realized is, as I came into this place of depression, the problem was everybody around me had been looking to me for a response, a positive answer to help them process where they were, and no one was taking the time to hear where I was. And so what I did was I pulled away from all my social circles. Now the pandemic shut down most of our associations anyway, but the people that were left, I pulled away from them. And what happened was, you add that to the fact that Chadwick Boseman had just passed away, and that I had hit that I had also hit his age. I was about 40, from 40 into 41. I had hit his age, and I'm watching people who are my ages die. Now, I done made it through police brutality. I done survived not going to jail. I went from the classroom, I missed the classroom to prison pipeline. And I got to this age, and now I'm saying to myself, yo, I can't go anymore. And what I realized was, it wasn't that my faith had left. It wasn't that my faith was gone. It was that the community with faith was taken away from me. And I hadn't had a way to process what I was dealing with. And one of the challenges for many of us, black men, is that when we begin to process pain, we understand the cry, because we just let you do that. But after the cry, you know what I'm saying? But after the cry, what happens then? We be like, yo, you good? You know what I'm saying? We get back to work. And the thing is, there's something that happens that's supposed to happen between the you good and getting back to work. Because for us, that was the highest expression of self, is crying. Right. Not realizing that was supposed to die. We were supposed to build on that from childhood. Now, from my particular faith and position, and I know that we have different perspectives in the room, my particular faith and position is that the Creator, He had feelings too. That's right. And He said things were good, and He was disappointed, and He was upset. And one of the things I had to learn was, finding God does not take away the fact that I have these God-like traits. And the God-like traits is not just power, but it's also being able to process pain. Empathizing and sympathizing, right? Because there was a portion in the scripture where they said, the great teacher Jesus says, He looked at the people like sheep without shepherd, and His heart was moved. And one of the things that I realized is that people saw, but their hearts weren't moved. You know why? Because social media had done something where it actually desensitized us. And everything that we saw, we were only hurting for a minute. Literally.
I was going to touch on that too, because, for myself, With myself, I didn't realize I was traumatized until about two days ago, 2 weeks ago, you know? And as Sharice mentioned, you know, I am one of the owners of the Black Lady Theater, the Slave Theater, you know, and I'm so thankful for my father. He's here with us, here in the building, you know, 87 years old he is, you know, and we've been in this, you know. That's real. Wow. We've been through a lot, you know, and all throughout our journey, you know, he's been instilling that strength in me, like, you know, just preparing me, you know, like we in the middle of a war, brother. You know what I mean? They let me know that, you know, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yeah.
You know, we have to be on our square. You know what I mean? He opened that level of consciousness up for me, so I'm thankful for that. But it's a lot of our brothers out here that don't have that. You know what I mean? So, what myself and my team, what we do is we build systems, we put infrastructure together, we help people to bring their intellectual property to life, you know, and we have to replicate that at the highest level. That's right. You know what I mean? And this is an attestament to that. You know, but as you were speaking on that, I definitely wanted to touch on that because
And I want to say something about this point. We got to learn the science of it. You know, cortisol is a stress chemical that's released in your when you have stress, right?
what was that was just released with me right there?
That was you talking about your dad opening up, and you was feeling it. You feel it. What y'all been through, the bond. You to me, you was realizing, wow,
Self-awareness.
yeah, that's it, right? You know, right?
Yeah.
But cortisol is released when you have stress. And we always in a constant state. And they said there was a doctor saying back in the caveman days, you know, you fight or flight, right? You see the saber tooth, you go that way. It's easy, right? But now we in a constant state of stress. That's cortisol being released constantly in your body. You have to find something where you're not cortisol. You have to find a space. Come hell or high water, because you can't function.
Let me just because he mentioned cortisol. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So, if you have a mother who's under stress while she's pregnant, her body's pumping cortisol, right? And that fetus, that baby, is getting hooked on cortisol. So now when that child comes out, that child needs the stress, the external aggravate, to feel natural, because they need that cortisol pumping.
Almost like
And so-
the crack baby.
Exactly.
So the regulation of emotions starts from the womb. You know what I'm saying?
No, so I'm just saying, so even in terms of what we're dealing with mental health and understanding how the environment, these things are happening when you brought up that science piece, when, you know, just dealing with our children in our community, looking at the family structure, what's the household they're coming out of. Here you have this child who's going to get that IEP because that child's, you know, acting out because they're responding to a chemical thing happening that was part of their prenatal situation. So even understanding that everything about us is responsive to the environment. So when you have a pregnancy, you want the best environment for that child.
Yes, sir.
No matter what. It's got to be peaceful, healthy, food, space, sky, water, music, you know, so that child has a chance to even just start right. You know, but then when that environment is full of turmoil, you know, so these are the challenges of wealth. I'm sorry.
So I definitely wanted to, you was talking about regulating emotions, right? Like, are we taught to do that? And, you know, out of the years that I've been working, you know, within the community and for the community, I'm gonna just cite 4 random cases. I really don't wanna use their names, but I'm gonna go ahead and use their names because I'm so proud of them. You understand?
Oh,
At the end of the
you
day.
got names to
pressure.
protect
Yeah,
yourself.
you know, like, I ain't gonna hold that. So Kayla first, you understand? Kayla had an IEP. She came to me when she was 9 years old. Now we're talking about the time when she was trying to transition from public school to junior high. And she had an IEP meeting. This is where the parent come in, they talk with the teacher, the principal, the counselor, everybody in the circle, psychiatrist or whatever, you know, is in the room, and they talk about how they're gonna actually put this plan together for this child. And her parent asked me, could you just come and attend the meeting with me? It wasn't something that I was used to doing or ever did before, for a matter of fact. But I went into the meeting, to see what's going on. And it was like, we all in the room, and you know, the kid is here, the parent is here, and it's like they just shouting out all these terms that I know running over both Kayla and her mother head. You understand? These parents barely even know what these people talking about. But then the teacher says something one day, during the meeting, and she goes, yeah, one time I put Kayla work in front of her, and she looked at the paper and said, I'm not doing this, I ain't retarded. You know what I mean? But Kayla knew enough to know, why is my work different from the rest of the kids in the class? You understand? I want the same work that everybody else is doing. So this is her knowing what she wants. You understand? She's saying, I can handle it. Don't tell me I'm stupid. Don't tell me I'm retarded. Don't tell me, like, I can handle it. And this is stuff that she learned with us. Long story short, with Kayla, you understand, it was like, once the school found out all the community service hours and work that she'd been putting in with the nonprofit after school, it was like whatever credit she was missing, they shifted it over exactly, and she was able to be promoted to the next grade. Unfortunately, she still had to stick with the IEP because, but still, it was like they were trying to leave her back in that meeting, and she was able to do that. Zayshawn is another one. They say when people with IEPs graduate, they got to get an IEP diploma. Now, what does that mean to someone who, go through all the same 12 years of school everybody else went to, but at the end, my certificate is different from everybody else's. And then I'm forced to go into the general population world.
Setting them up for
You understand? So I had to go to his school, talk with his guidance counselors, principals. At the end of the day, it was like they didn't give him a regular diploma, but they didn't give him an IEP diploma either. Because of all the hours he put in the community service, he got what was called, I believe it was called a work service diploma. So he was still able to come out with something better. You understand? It shows that, look, it's not an IEP diploma that says that I'm mental or emotional, but at least I know how to work. You understand? Like, you can put me to work. I can get a job. You understand? Laura, because now we're talking about regulating emotions. There's a little exercise we do when we talk about feelings, thoughts, words, actions, habits, and character. Because at the end of the day, we talk about, we're going to build us up to be strong black men, but nobody really talk about strong character and what that looks like. So I'm teaching these young people like, it starts with your feelings. You understand? A lot of us, we make our decisions based on how we feel alone. If I feel a certain way, I'm gonna act a certain way. We don't think about the thoughts, we don't think about the words, or you understand, we go straight from feelings to action. We're not taught to process that. So I identified to the whole class one day, and in our classes, by the way, the youngest is 6, the oldest is 24. We don't break them down and say 6 to 12 here, 13 to 17 here. No, it's a family affair. You understand? When we eat dinner at home, we all eat together. We don't separate based on age groups and stuff like that. So we can all learn together. Now, Laura's 6 years old at this time, and we talking about where bullying starts. You understand? And bullying usually starts somewhere between, you could say, the thoughts and the words. Because bullying doesn't necessarily have to be physical. You understand? Like, it doesn't have to be action. Sometimes you can say things and still it's considered bullying people. So we identified that that's where bullying starts. And I asked the entire class, so how do we stop something like that? Nobody had an answer. This little 6-year-old girl raises her hand and says, what I would do is, if I'm not feeling good, I'm gonna immediately shut down for a second, try to change my thoughts into some good feelings. That way, my words will then be good, and then my actions, and this was a 6-year-old.
She's
you understand?
intelligent.
You understand? So, and I'm saying that to say, some of us, we just have it in us. You understand? Everybody, and everybody I know learns differently. Last example I'm gonna give is EJ, little EJ, another 6-year-old in the class. they had a leadership assignment where everybody had to, you know, break down the word leadership as an acronym. And there's certain qualities of leadership that we're looking for, like the L could be loyalty, you know, the R could be respect, stuff like that, you know what I mean? And a lot of kids in the class, you know, didn't really get, you know, high scores. Now, EJ's 6 years old. EJ popped out 100. You understand? EJ, right. So everybody mad at him like, yo, he can't even read. How he got 100 on the thing, you know? And I said, you know what? Because EJ was smart enough to realize I might not understand this assignment, but he sat next to somebody who did understand the assignment and asked for help. And the person helped them. And this is, so it's like these are things that we're not doing. You understand? Or we're not really.
He has a growth mindset. He wasn't afraid, not a fixed mindset to ask questions to learn, and that's difficult too.
Right.
There's a brother in the back of the question too. Speak of something that you said, Aaron, about the young lady who's, you know, with the test, right? And it's funny, when I was growing up, I was very shy, and when you're shy or you're nervous, your brain shuts down, right? But I was in a good family environment, but because I was shy, my brain was shut down. I wouldn't do well on tests. So now they're telling this person they got a IE whatever, you know what I'm saying? Suppose you got a family environment that is stressful and it's hard, and your brain shuts down. But they tell you got to go in this particular class. I'm not saying that's always the case, but I'm just looking at myself. When I was in a home environment that was very nurturing, but still because of my shyness, I couldn't perform my academics. So how about the children who in a home environment that's stressful and they can't perform and they being labeled? And then they're going to attach whatever they attach. You graduated with a such and such, whatever. Well, how do you know from the time I was born to my middle school and high school that I was stressed? And you labeling me with a learning disorder when that's not what it is. I got people arguing in the crib all the time. You know what I'm saying? I got my father yelling at my mother all the time. And my mother doing everything on her own. But you don't know that's going on, but you want to label me? So I think they got to be, it's difficult, right? Because there's so many children. There's got to be a little bit more investigation, but they ain't got no time for that. You know?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's get this way. That's fine. There's one other. Yeah.
Like I said, we're gonna open it up in the.
But there's a brother in the back with a question.
Yeah.
A lot of it was I guess kind of addressed, but just to relate to you, I've also taught students since I'm only 23, but I've been taught like as a paraprofessional, and currently I teach civic engagement. You know, and leadership to students from K through 12, not K through 12, K through 5th. You know, and a lot of my kids come from what we consider on the spectrum, right? Or from, as you guys were talking about, IEP, the neighborhood itself, we live in Coney Island, you know, things of that nature. Even the neighborhood is stuck in like 1996 or something. You know what I mean? So you see the environment. But my question to you is, when I go and I look at my kids, like for example today, it was a day of a lot of incidents. You know, there was no regulation, as you talk about, who teaches you how to regulate your feelings, there's no regulation of emotional response. So a lot of times when I see that there's going to be a dispute, there's no second of measuring when this dispute could happen. It could be it's a sight and an action, you know? And so the hardest part is having them understand, worrying about themselves. You know, when you talk about stress, and I find it ironic that I go and teach this, but even in my own personal life, right now, I feel like I'm a victim of that stress. And I'm being honest, I do only feel, even listening to you guys, I do only feel that a lot of life right now works on this stress. And for me to let go, it's a little vulnerability that's a little bit too dangerous. So my question is, where do I discern when to, I understand I have these feelings, but let these feelings do what the feelings are supposed to do, because there's a risk if I let these feelings do what they do, I might be blindsided hit by something that doesn't have the same feelings or the same emotional intelligence as I do. You know what I mean? So I understand the biometrics of how it's supposed to work and what the goal is, you know? But in the reality, like, where do I go about working that out? You understand what I'm saying?
What do you think the risk is? What's the risk at? Is the risk in sharing?
One second, before you get, you good on that, y'all?
Yeah.
Give that stuff to Luke.
So I was saying, what's the risk? You said a risk.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand the idea, but I'm saying, you personally, what is the risk?
So I guess, because I was thinking about that, you know what I'm saying, while I was sitting here, right? And I guess that risk is just like losing your sanity, right? Because I can definitely see, like, I guess, you know, you could find your advice. You guys were talking about dopamine and all that distractions and things of that nature, right? But I could find my advice. I could try to slow my pace down and things of that nature. But a lot of times I feel like no matter the things you change with yourself, your environment kind of forces you. And I don't want to be like titled, which gives me this tension of not really rocking with my decisions myself too. You know what I'm saying? So I feel, how do I gauge my environment, right? Myself, you know what I mean? And be realistic at the same time is what I'm asking. Because I feel like a lot of our mental issue, speaking of slavery, speaking of any time, speaking of how do you feel any law, any policy, is literally just how do you manage yourself? You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at right now.
So we're gonna bring that though. We're gonna bring workshops.
That's right.
Like immediately.
Let me touch on that, Paul. Because we definitely gonna bring workshops immediately. This is the First Amendment, right? This is definitely on the First Amendment. But it's what it sounds like to me, brother, like you already tapped in. You know, because the first thing is a certain level of consciousness. You know what I mean? There's certain people or individuals that don't even have that level of consciousness to be able to distinguish that self-awareness. You know? So like my charge would be to, you know, you already know, welcome home. You know what I mean? You know, let's keep building. Like I said, when I mentioned about building systems, putting infrastructures together, you know what I mean? Helping people to bring their intellectual property to life. This is what we have to do. You know what I mean? Together as a unit, we have to put our own systems together to interface, you know, because there's so many systems that's designed against us. You know what I mean? And you know, I feel that's a lot of what we're speaking to, these systems that's designed against us. You know, we said, I think it was you that said it, about 2009, it's like it will be forbidden for what? God, how many brothers up here speaking? Water almost came out my eyes up here, you know? But that level of consciousness, brother, and let's continue to build with each other, share these stories, share these practices, work with each other, you know.
We're gonna have workshops, so that's you know, yeah.
I mean, I agree 100%. Well, Paul, we're going to have more workshops, and like Omar just said, like, you know, the fact that you are aware already speaks volumes in itself. Now, kind of taking a page out of his name, Paul. Kind of taking a page out of Paul's book as far as the spiritual connection and how we can't be separated from that. When I was a kid, there was a cartoon that came on every morning before I went to school called, I think it was called Mighty Max. And he had the red cat. Y'all remember that? He talking about how he was in you know, and the bird, the fowl, would always say to him, in every person lies a gift, and in that gift lies your destiny.
Wow.
Now, I couple that with another saying that God instilled in every individual a purpose. Now, if God created you in a way and with a specific purpose, why would he not equip you with the tools needed to fulfill said purpose? Right? So you have it, right? You just, the only advice I would give you at this point, like to try to answer your question directly, do not take sometimes what we do is we let the weight of the world stand on us, you know what I mean? Or we feel like we gotta do so much. Try not to get caught up in that. You understand? Understand yourself, understand your limits. You understand? And don't be ashamed of them. If you wanna stretch them or build them, then do that, you know? But a lot of that oil is gonna come from within self, and you got the awareness part. You already recognize it's there. Just build it, you know, and if you gotta come together with other people to, you know, help work on it, by all means. But
we don't create that space.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
I think I want to.
This brother.
Yeah, I see him. Go ahead. I'll probably try to tie it with. Go ahead.
After what you said, I was thinking because I normally think the same way. So like hearing you say that, at first I was gonna kind of just sit back and kind of listen, and not really, just kind of just take in what everybody else was saying. But since you were so candid, I feel like it makes sense to kind of just open it up. But I actually respect that because I used to do that a lot too. But the point that I wanted to make was like a couple things that you guys said. I can't remember everything specifically, but a couple things that was said was like about being. The first thing that came to my mind is when this guy Paul, sorry, not this guy, but when Paul said that certain people, like when they feel like when they just got out of jail and they want to connect with you, but like they're looking through you. And it's like I feel like a lot of that is the trauma that we deal with in our community. Like a lot of times, me specifically in my own self, like I want to connect, like dealing with my own mental health struggles, I want to connect. And I know the people around me want to connect too, but they are not able to, and it's like we're kind of just looking through each other. And we're not really like paying attention to the flaws or the inconsistencies or like the little like troubles that we have. So it's hard to kind of like feel like you have that. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's hard to
It's like, it's really like, it's like time out of mind. You know, a lot of us don't know what time and when to put it all in place. You may go through some experiences, you know, I deal with various things, like everything from temptation to you know, having peer pressure on people because they don't know. And, you know, the biggest thing that you're going to find, this was something like you say from a movie, maybe if you wanted to pick it, there was this thing in Batman that I was watching, right, I forget the one that they had called the Dark Knight, Christian Knight, these guys. And what he said was to the guy that made it really great is, he says, you know, you fear something you don't understand. And see, and when you don't understand something, instead of you, like you said, asking questions to find out from a source, you can't go to somebody who don't know anything and expect to get an answer. Because they're going to keep you right where you are, in your wonderment. The deal of it is that you just got to not be afraid to ask the question. I mean, even though it was told to you even vividly, you never question God about what he does, but you're supposed to question him. There's no such thing. He's not religious. He created everything and anything that's here. So if he made everything and everything is like, if it rains on the just, it's going to rain on the unjust. So what would be the problem of you not understanding your purpose on why you're here? A lot of people, and I'll say this too, but it starts from birth, like you said. The biggest thing that you have to understand is this. They might call you a loser, they might call you all these names, they call you a dumb or whatever. But the real deal of it is that when it was a race to get to that age, there was millions and billions of sperms. Who won? Okay? Who won?
There's just something else that I wanted to tie into what the pastor was saying when you said, like you left your faith-based community and like you didn't know, like that was part of the reason why you weren't able to kind of like do what you wanted to do. And I feel like the reason I came to this event is because I wanted to ask or just kind of figure out like, how do you provide hope to not only yourself, but to other people when you're trying to make like things happen, like especially being a black man and like coming from our community, like it's hard to like, people tell you go to therapy, people tell you do like, and me myself, I don't really believe in therapy, kind of like the brother was saying over there, like it doesn't really work for me. I've tried it doesn't really work for me, but I understand why people like it. But the point is that like, what tangible and intangible aspects do you guys kind of have for like providing people hope and providing yourself hope and like getting out of that situation and saying like, listen, this is how we do it, like this is what we do, like maybe it's starting a business, like you said, IEP is getting intellectual properties out, or IEPs is different, I'm sorry, IEPs within intellectual property, or like setting up businesses, or like coming together as a community, or whatever it is. I don't want to talk for too long, but pretty much like, like
I want to jump in. I want to try to pull as much as I can here.
Yeah.
Part of what I'm hearing is the necessity for community. Right. I think even what Brother Baba was saying about how his response to therapy was, his response was, I went back to my brothers. I think the challenge for many of us is, even when we identify purpose was not just for you to be discovered from God. It's also the community that you're in, right? Problems that arise reveal purpose, right? Christ, and I teach this to my people, crisis is a classroom. And if you're not careful, you'll run from crisis and put your head back in the ground and be like, I need to figure things out, when in actuality, that crisis is supposed to pull something out of you. So when you're in that moment where you're saying, I know that there's more, and I'm trying to discern who, part of the beauty of the journey, part of the beauty of getting to the destination is the journey, right? And there are people in your circle who you're supposed to talk to who are gonna get it wrong. Because that's the only way you will identify what's right in you. And we've been taught perfection. And perfection and purpose are not going to function well together. Matter of fact, purpose is defined in the original language as seed. So when you begin to consider purpose is a seed, you need to bury it in some dirt. It has to get dirty, it has to get messy, it has to disappear for a season. And the reason why I think it's so important that you even can express that is because you've tried to sow purpose in places that it couldn't grow. Get what I'm saying? And you would determine like, this is not good for me, this is not good for me. And what we've been taught is that if you have moments where it's like, oh, this doesn't work for me, then I need to fall back. I mean, Jamaica, there was I need to dress back. But in actuality, that's when you're supposed to step up. That's when you're supposed to forward. Why? Because that means what you are is necessary. And the challenge is, we've been taught if it doesn't look good, then that's not where it's supposed to be. When in actuality, that is necessary, right? So partner up, and I'm going to tie you in, Brother Paul, too. Because if we're going to go back to this Batman theme, right? One of the things that one of the characters Bane says is, he says, you adopted the knife.
That's right.
But I was born in it.
That's right.
And the beauty of being black men and women who've experienced pain is that there is nothing that anybody else can tell us about pain that we haven't been through. And so the beauty of it is, this is why we need to be able to get together and have and develop these moments, is that now I can say, oh, you're the answer too, right? It's not just one person having the answer. So when you say to me, brother, you know what? Therapy didn't work for me. And I'm hearing this brother say, therapy didn't work for me. I'm like, oh, this is an answer right here. So I'm excited. You know why? Because in actuality now, purpose is being united.
Yes, sir.
That means like the seed and the seed in the darkness just flipped in my head.
But when I bring it to our brother Muhammad, I know you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, because I feel like one of the most powerful tools that we have, just to answer your question, I feel like this is something I could really relate to, because it's something that I've been working on with children around myself, because as you were saying, vulnerability, just being able to put yourself out there, accepting failure, making it normalized. Like half of the time we're talking about being able to plant these seeds of self-growth, self-awareness. But what happens is, more often than not, these things don't grow the first time. We fail. We think, what's going on? As you were speaking on your experiences with therapy, you go for the first time and you're asking yourself, why isn't it going the way I thought it would? It's never a narrow path to really get to where you want to go. You have to understand and normalize that failure it's not even just an option, it's destined to happen. It's part of the process. You're gonna fail 1,000 times. This could drop tomorrow. Everything that we're working towards could drop tomorrow, but how do you get back? Then you have to be able to speak on it, be able to test. I'm getting it.
Come on,
you gotta be able to testify these things. Really just like put yourself out there, and then someone else could be able to grow from these things, maybe even learn from your failures, avoid those failures, and really just,
You gotta go back to your trauma too. You gotta go back to your trauma too. That's hard. You gotta go. You might have to tell nobody, but you gotta go back to your trauma.
Yeah, they got the fear thing, but so to the other brother here that was here as well, and his brother, the first step to resolve these issues, the first step is just time with yourself. That's your first step. If you're looking for that first step, what gives you hope? You have to spend some quality time with your dolo. You have to go into who you are, and then once you're not judged, when you don't judge yourself by everybody else, then you can begin to have those qualities. But as long as you're reacting to what you see out there, and you don't give your time to reflect and see who you are and what your purpose is, what seeds you want to plant, and all that stuff, nothing else is going to stick. You have to get your ground fertile first, and you do that by spending time with yourself. Meditation,
prayer, just listen to, whatever it is that's you. You know, and a lot of times as men, we're so busy taking care of everybody, right? And no disrespect to the sisters, they get credit for it, right? But most of us grown men, we're taking care of 2 or 3 households. You know, if you got an ex-wife, you got that house, you got your house. If you got kids in college, you got that house. You know what I'm saying? So I know what it was like when my daughter called me 2 weeks ago and said, oh, you know, Dad, the NYU bill is due on November 30th, not in December. So I can tell you right now what that stress was. I can tell you what I went through. And I had to spend time with the feeling of the phone call. Why the child told me this last minute? I had to deal with it. I had to get on task and make it happen. She's in school and everything was fine, the bills paid. But I had to find a way, but I had to feel a way. And I had to allow myself to feel a way. And if I needed to be mad at her or mad at myself, or just like, yo, this is some bullshit, you know, whatever it was, I just had to be, this is where I was. And I had to accept the fact that this is how I felt about it. You know, but if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to be here. We wouldn't be here. Oh my God, I got into panic mode. Because we can't be in panic mode when we're trying to make these decisions. That's what we were talking about earlier. Because there's too many people dependent on us. So we can't fly off like the handle. But we don't have to keep everything in. We just have to start dealing with it before it becomes crisis.
And there's also the stress of not being able to manage the households.
Yes.
Right? Sasha got.
And that's it. No one else around me may understand it, but I have to do this for me. If I have no reason to believe this isn't where I'm supposed to be, then I have to keep pounding this thing until I get it done.
Do you know anybody in your life or in your world? I've seen this with Caribbean people, I've seen this with African American people, right? Everybody knows, gotta know somebody. A friend or family member who they ain't really got much education, you know, right? But they seem to persevere, you know? Like tenacious and grit. We can do workshops on tenacity, what grit is. There's a science to grit, right? I mean, you might not be born with grit, but you can develop grit is my point. There's a science, right? But you got some people who don't have nothing. And they persevere. They buying homes, they building businesses. We know those people. Everybody got those, you got to know somebody who don't got your brains. And you're wondering how they persevere. You know, not to be competitive, but you know everybody can be human, right? How they persevering? They ain't got no degree. They got 2 houses, you know, right? That's what resilience is, like he said it. Yo, those people, like the Jamaicans said, can't done. Like they no matter what they pushing. You know people who they do home health care work, they got no education, they make people, they get people job. And they got money. Right? So sometimes education is not what gets it. You get it twisted if you got education, that's just gonna carry you. Right. You got,
They got an education. They know something.
Yeah.
Because
that don't.
they accomplished it.
Yeah. They say emotional intelligence, people will succeed who don't have a high IQ, but they got a high EI. Right. Don't have a high IQ, but a high EQ. Yeah. Emotional quotient, intelligence quotient. That you'll make money just like somebody has a high IQ. But that don't get it in the world. All them grandmothers you guys know, you all got them. We ain't had no degree, right? Tenacity, right? You got to keep. But also, that's a skill set in itself to learn how to do that. But sometimes, we fall down. Oh, get back up. You know what I'm saying? That's a skill.
So I want to piggyback on what Paul's saying. Like, tenacity is a very big thing. With resilience, like, okay, I was a WWF fan back in the day, and people would be like, "Oh, who's your favorite wrestler?" I had my top 3. It's always Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, of all time. And people be like, "Well, why is Shawn Michaels so high on the list?" I'm like, because nobody realized how resilient that man was. You understand? Like, resilience was a trait that he carried. It's like stick-to-itiveness. You gotta stick to something. You understand? Like, and be persistent, especially if it's something you want out of life. If success is what you want, you gotta stick to it. And back to that positive reinforcement, you understand? What I'm teaching these young people is, we have goals, you know what I mean? But sometimes it's a short-term goal, and sometimes it's a long-term goal. Don't get them confused and mixed up, you understand? Because sometimes they're like, yeah, because by this time next year, I'm gonna have a car, and I'm gonna have a house, and I'm scratching my head like, you might want to put that in your 10-year plan, not your 1-year plan, because you setting yourself up for failure otherwise. You understand? What are you going to be doing in 1 year that's going to bring you that? You know, like,
Does he have a plan? Does he write it down?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're building a plan. That's the exercise. You know, if you fail a plan, you plan to fail type stuff. So, so with the resilience part again, and that stick-to-itiveness, like, you know, you just got to, like, you can't let every little, you know, bump in the road or every single no. You understand? No, sometimes it's just the beginning of the negotiation. Yeah. You understand? Like, somebody tell me no, all right. I'm thinking about how can I,
And you know, none of us in here can't find somebody we like. Read their story and you're going to see, right, what it is to be flat on your face and keep it moving. Mm-hmm. All scientists, anything, we only see the end product. Scientists, inventors, this cat be failing constantly. Me, I've been done already. You know?
Yeah. I think as we wrap this up, right? As we wrap this up, I think part of what I've learned resilience to be is a type of intelligence. And intelligence is not information. Intelligence is how to respond to the lack of it. And oftentimes, when we look at resilient people, what you find is that they were able to be met with a no and say, okay, how do I respond to this? And I think what I've seen in everyone who I've studied, even in my times of resilience, I understood that I didn't have to be owned by whatever challenged me. And I think if we really sit on that thought, it doesn't matter what you face, IEP or not, I'm able to overcome. ADHD or not, I'm able to overcome. Second color or not, it's an intelligence that says, this is not enough to stop me. And I think if once you find that place in yourself, it doesn't matter what it is, right? I am going to make it, right? And scripture says, someone set their face like a stone. It doesn't matter what that's in front of me, I'm gonna find a way out. And I have to be smart enough, I have to be intelligent enough to identify that if they close the door, there's a window somewhere. That is what intelligence is. That's what resilience is. It's intelligence.
Yes, sir.
I did want to ask you, bro.
Yeah,
I feel like you got your answer a little bit now.
definitely from a lot of things that was said, I feel like, I'm gonna be
But we need you to follow up with us, because like I said,
I already know what I'm gonna do. I'll be back.
So, yeah, we could go on for days.
We can talk after.
For us to be in a room together talking about this thing that people don't talk about. You know what I mean? And not only is it us in here, but look at our panelists, y'all. Look at these beautiful black men that are up here talking about these things that black men don't. Right? At least not as a black woman. It's not something that I'm a part of the conversation. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of the conversation as well, because that's real. Like I said, you know, we could go on this topic. Oh, you know, which is why we are going to continue having these series and having these workshops and making this space available for us to come together and have these conversations and do the workshops and do the activities and start to, you know, make these things process and work together and build and continue to rise as we do, like the phoenix from the ashes. So with that, thank you to our panelists. Please clap it up for them. We are going to close out tonight with one more just piece of art and music. So if Nazi Goose and Elijah here can come back on up.
Before us panelists leave, can we get a still? This is beautiful.